Beneath the shimmering expanse of Nightshade's cosmic canopy, Crosspeak Station stood as a lone beacon, its sharp spires piercing the quiet darkness like the horns of a metal leviathan. Once a proud outpost on the fringes of the known galaxy, Crosspeak had gradually slipped into half-forgotten legend, its corridors echoing with the footsteps of travelers seeking refuge amid the swirling cosmic storms. The station's legacy, though, remained strong in the hearts of its inhabitants, who whispered of the time when intrepid explorers first stepped upon its reinforced decks and declared it the final bastion of humanity in these remote reaches. Among the gnarled skeletons of half-burnt bulkheads and the flickering overhead lights, scarred from centuries of cosmic bombardment, toiled a motley assortment of humans and other interstellar wanderers. Raynor was one such figure, a man tall yet stooped, whose left arm bore the marks of a savage plasma burn. Though none could fully recall where he had earned those scars, rumors abounded. Some said he had wrestled a rogue synthetic in the station's maintenance bay. Others told of a fierce starship skirmish during which he had shielded his squad mates from a vented thruster's molten exhaust. In truth, Raynor never spoke of it, for it was not the markings upon his flesh that caused him the greatest sorrow, but the weight of memory he carried in his heart. Lyra Elysian, in contrast, was the station's fiercely independent scientist, renowned for her sharp mind and sharper tongue. She was petite in stature, yet her presence filled a room more thoroughly than the hiss of the station's oxygen pumps. Her hair, a dark tapestry braided in complex patterns, gleamed as though it were spun from the starlight outside. Every inch of her person seemed charged with restless energy fingers tapping impatiently on the edges of her data tablet, eyes flickering with a perpetual curiosity. Where Raynor was taciturn, quiet, and measured, she was brash, brilliant, and dismissive of those she deemed slow-witted or unnecessarily brutish. Crosspeak Station, though often peaceful, was not without tension, and a subtle current of dissatisfaction coursed through its halls. The station's maintenance systems were aging, its primary reactor requiring more and more attention. Strange anomalies in the sensor readings indicated possible microfractures in the hull. Whispers of sabotage drifted amid the taverns, where smugglers and off-world couriers shared bitter ale, their voices echoing in the labyrinthine chambers. Rumor turned to speculation, and speculation begat fear, for beyond the station's defenses lay the haunting vacuum of Nightshade space, where unknown forces might lurk in silent wait. Despite Lyra's general aloofness, she found herself occasionally forced to collaborate with Raynor. Commander Drake, an older officer whose gravelly voice still commanded respect, insisted that each department share resources in these trying times. Lyra, certain that her intellect alone could unravel the station's structural quandaries, chafed at the notion of relying on Raynor's brute strength and mechanical expertise. She muttered curt jabs about his so-called frailty, remarking upon his old injuries, the barely disguised shakes in his left hand, and the limp he concealed behind a stoic gait. Raynor heard the comments, and though each barb stung, he kept his own counsel. In his heart, he knew more about adversity than most who roamed Crosspeak's hallowed corridors. Yet he believed that in time, his deeds would speak louder than any cutting phrase. He carried an unspoken humility about him, rarely meeting Lyra's eyes, rarely challenging her harsh words. Deep inside, there flickered a glimmer of empathy for the woman whose every glance smoldered with passion and impatience. Unbeknownst to her, he recognized in Lyra a caged fierceness that had yet to find a path toward trust. The crisis began quietly, as so many do, with a single overlooked anomaly. In the hush of the zero-hour shift, a research drone malfunctioned in the agricultural dome, sending false data to the climate controls. The temperature soared within those sealed biomes, causing fungal growths to balloon and delicate flora to wither. Lyra discovered this during her rounds, immediately alerting station security to the malfunctioning drone. She noted the odd pattern in its signals, as if someone or something had hijacked its operating system. The mere possibility of external interference set her mind aflame. for Crosspeak's security net was considered foolproof, impervious to infiltration by pirates or hidden saboteurs. Still, the red flicker of suspicion took second place to the more pressing threat. The station's environmental balance hung upon a razor's edge. Already, the food supply was at risk. Commander Drake, his uniform neatly pressed and his hair thinning but meticulously combed, issued direct orders to contain the problem at once. Lyra, tasked with unraveling the drone's unusual software glitch, found herself working alongside Raynor, who arrived from the maintenance deck with toolbox in hand. She gave him no more than a quick nod, her voice distant as she recited her theories and typed furiously upon her data tablet. Raynor listened with quiet deference, his hand deftly disconnecting the drone's power couplings. He let her words flow over him, gleaning only what he needed to complete his part of the work. It took nearly 2 hours, but between Lyra's surgical approach to the software and Raynor's patient recalibration of the hardware, they managed to restore normal function. The agricultural dome's temperature began to stabilize, saving most of the crops from ruin. Lyra, though relieved, could not hide her scowl. It was probably a random short, she said, though her voice held an undercurrent of doubt. A cosmic radiation spike, or something else easily explained. No need to celebrate just yet. Raynor simply nodded, his gaze fixed upon the reinitialized drone. He recognized the footprints of tampering in its hardware, signs that a more sinister cause was at play. But Lyra offered no ear for his quiet concerns. Instead, she strode away, data tablet clutched to her chest, muttering about deadlines and more pressing experiments. Raynor sighed and wiped the sweat from his brow, shaking his head gently. He found no pleasure in contention and believed that in due course, the truth would come to light. Mia, the station's soft-spoken communications specialist, studied the drone's logs later that same day. She possessed a remarkable acuity for code, gleaning patterns where others saw only random bits of data. Sitting in her cramped office, filled with blinking consoles and tangles of wires, Mia noticed a thread of alien syntax woven into the drone's code. Unknown origin, indecipherable structure. It looked more like an audio wave than standard script. Her heart fluttered with unease. Without delay, she requested an urgent meeting with Commander Drake. It was perhaps an omen of darker events, for as Mia compiled her report, warning sirens erupted throughout Crosspeak Station. A fire had broken out on Deck 11, near the station's oldest storage bays. While the station's response team rushed to extinguish the flames, the blaze spread with surprising speed, defying the usual automatic safeguards. A mechanical fault, or a malicious sabotage. The station's inhabitants, uncertain, fled their quarters in search of safety. The corridor lights dimmed, plunging entire sections of Crosspeak into flickering gloom. Over the frantic alarms, a single command boomed: evacuate non-essential personnel. Contain the fire at all costs. Lyra had only just set aside her data tablet when the alarms blared. The blaze, as she soon discovered, raged through an industrial sector adjoining her lab, sending thick plumes of acrid smoke swirling through the ventilation ducts, while firefighting drones did their best to contain the outbreak. The conflagration advanced in cunning twists. As if propelled by a conscious will, Lyra grabbed a portable extinguisher and a rebreather mask, her scientist's instincts telling her not to wait for further instructions. If the flame spread to the sealed compartments housing volatile chemicals, an explosion could tear open the station's hull, venting them all into the inky vacuum beyond. She sprinted down Corridor 6A, calling for any personnel who might still be trapped in the chaos. Sparks rained from the overhead wiring, scorching the walkway with tiny embers. Smoke curled around her feet, reminiscent of living serpents. Her heart pounded with each step, yet she pressed on, certain that the station's only hope lay in swift action. As she turned a corner, a bulkhead collapsed with a metallic screech, sealing her path. The slightest miscalculation now could end in tragedy. It was then she saw Raynor, emerging from the swirling haze. His left arm was bandaged hastily, a fresh blister visible on his wrist. She realized that he, too, had been fighting the fire likely longer than she had. Pride warred with relief in her chest. She gave him a curt nod, struggling to maintain composure. Together, they pried open a side hatch leading to the service ducts, hoping to bypass the collapsed corridor and reach the station's primary power relays before the fire did. When they crawled through the narrow duct, each breath was laborious. The heat pressed in. Sweat dripped from their brows, and their limbs trembled with fatigue. Lyra felt a twinge of guilt for her earlier harshness, for Raynor's determination now shone unmistakably in the flickering glow of emergency lights. She noticed his hands trembling, his old injury flaring in painful protest, yet he pushed forward without complaint. Within moments, they reached the relay chamber, its door sealed tight to protect the delicate machinery within. "Override the seal," Lyra called, her voice muffled through the rebreather. She tapped furiously on the control panel, but the codes refused to comply. "It's not responding. Someone else has locked it down." Raynor's jaw tightened. He motioned for Lyra to step aside, bracing his shoulder against the sealed hatch. With a deep intake of breath, he poured all his strength into forcing the door. For an instant, she considered scoffing once more at the futility of brute force, but to her shock, the metal groaned under his effort. Steam hissed from the hydraulic seals, and a minute gap appeared. Lyra seized the opportunity to jam her portable extinguisher's nozzle into the opening, using it as a lever. Together, they pried the door loose, staggering into the relay chamber in a cloud of swirling smoke. Inside, the chamber's consoles blinked frantically, error messages layering upon each other in a cacophonous barrage of warnings. Pulsing lights indicated that the temperature and pressure levels were dangerously unstable. If the fire advanced any farther, the entire station could face catastrophic meltdown. Raynor immediately worked to reroute power from the threatened conduits, his eyes scanning the readouts. Lyra located the nearest firefighting interface and initiated the station's emergency deluge system for decks 10 through 13, hoping water and halon release would smother the worst of the flames. While they labored, unseen events unfolded beyond the station's shell. A faint, alien signal pulsed through the comm arrays, slithering unseen into the core systems. Mia, isolating the suspicious code from her communications desk, tried desperately to counter its infiltration. Yet the signal persisted, dancing through encrypted channels, its presence ominous and invasive. The fire's malevolent progress was no coincidence. Within Crosspeak's labyrinth of corridors lurked those who had witnessed strange flickers at the edge of their vision, ghostly apparitions of electric blue static. A handful of technicians insisted they had heard phantom voices whispering through the vents. Rumors multiplied, twisting into wild tales of a hidden entity controlling the station's systems, forcing catastrophic malfunctions to break the station's spirit. But as panic spread, an unlikely camaraderie also arose. Station dwellers from all walks of life joined forces, forging bucket brigades, prying open jammed doors, and carrying the injured to the medical bay. In adversity, they rediscovered their shared humanity. Commander Drake, his uniform scorched at the cuffs, directed the firefighting teams with unwavering resolve. He trusted Raynor's and Lyra's expertise, even if they fought side by side with obvious friction. Indeed, he recognized in them two halves of a complementary whole: Lyra's scientific brilliance and Raynor's hands-on pragmatism. He believed that together, they might yet safeguard the station from complete disaster. Under his command, the station's populace gradually slowed the fire's advance. Though the cost was high, dozens lay injured, and entire sections of the station were now inaccessible, sealed behind airlock barriers to starve the hungry flames of oxygen. In the nerve center of the communications deck, Mia and her small team wrestled with the mysterious code that kept surfacing in the station's mainframe. Each time they attempted to isolate and eradicate it, the code slipped away, as if it possessed a will of its own. Worse still, intermittent transmissions from outside suggested that Crosspeak Station was not alone in facing this crisis. A series of barely audible signals, traced back through the swirling cosmic haze, indicated other outposts in similarly dire straits, each reporting sudden fires or catastrophic malfunctions. The phenomenon, though scattered, evoked the idea of a coordinated assault from some unknown foe. On the station's battered decks, Raynor and Lyra continued their relentless efforts. The two had wrestled the main power grid under control, but secondary systems threatened to overload. Glowing emergency lights cast uneasy shadows, revealing scars along the walls and puddles of water mingled with twisted metal. Smoke hung thick in the air, searing their throats. Their meager rest came in the form of brief collapses against cool bulkheads, exchanging only a few weary words of encouragement. In one such moment, Lyra looked up, chest heaving, and locked eyes with Raynor. I'm sorry," she said through rasping breaths. "For what I said before, I can't stand seeing things break around me." Raynor's expression was guarded, but gentle. "Everyone has their burdens," he replied softly. "We do what we can. Let's keep moving." She nodded, swallowing hard. There was no time for deeper reflection. The fight was not yet won, and Crosspeak's fate hung on a precarious thread. Unbeknownst to either of them, the deeper layers of sabotage continued to churn, guided by an unseen hand, or mind, that found delight in the station's mounting despair. As the hours dragged on, exhaustion weighed upon every soul in Crosspeak Station. From the greenest recruit to the most seasoned veteran, security teams spread out, searching for the source of the devastation, checking compartments one by one for hidden devices or tampered circuits. Data tablets beeped incessantly, each new report revealing a fresh wave of sabotage. Coolant lines severed, protective shutters jammed open, and atmospheric monitors adjusted to false readings. In every instance, that alien signal seemed to lurk just behind the code, a digital marionette pulling the station's strings. Lyra found herself summoned to the command center. The large circular room held banks of monitors displaying camera feeds and sensor readouts. Flickering holographic projections showed the station's cross-section, highlighting areas ravaged by fire. Commander Drake stood at a central console, brow furrowed as he analyzed the data pouring in. Mia hovered beside him, her bright eyes wide with a mixture of determination and dread. "Dr. Elysian," the commander said, gesturing her forward. "We suspect that the same force behind the drone malfunction has orchestrated these fires." Mia's discovered fragments of alien signals embedded in nearly every sabotage site. Someone's guiding these events, possibly from outside the station. "We need a solution," Lyra swallowed, the weight of responsibility pressing on her. She studied the readouts, noting the repeating patterns of coded pulses. Each spike seemed timed to coincide with mechanical failures and unexplained electrical surges. "Whoever is controlling this," she said, voice taut, "is doing it remotely, possibly from a hidden ship or nearby asteroid. We'll have to isolate Crosspeak systems from external contact, but that could mean losing all communications with allied stations." Commander Drake nodded. "If we can't sever this connection, the sabotage will continue. But we can't risk the station's life support by cutting every system. We need precision, Dr. Elysian." And quickly, on the far side of the command center, Raynor entered, still looking worn from his struggles against the flames. Yet there was a latent strength in his bearing, a quiet resilience that Lyra could not help but admire. He glanced over the displays, then cast a question in his calm, measured tone. "Is there a way we can trace the signal's origin before we sever it?" Mia stepped forward, tucking her hair behind her ear. "I've tried triangulating it using the external sensor suite, but the readings are erratic, as though the signal bounces around. It's almost like we're dealing with an advanced cloaking technology, or something not entirely human." A hush fell across the center at her final words. Though humanity had encountered numerous alien species over its centuries of spacefaring, the notion of a malicious, invisible intelligence, capable of orchestrating such widespread mayhem, was still unsettling. A cold chill passed through the room, as though each occupant sensed the gravity of their predicament more clearly than before. For Lyra, the situation was an irresistible puzzle. Her mind, ever attuned to patterns and mysteries, flickered with potential solutions. She had no illusions about the danger they all faced. Yet the puzzle called to her. Taking me as data, she began running calculations, hoping to uncloak the signal's frequency or decipher its cryptic code. If she succeeded, they might disrupt its hold on Crosspeak systems. If she failed, the station would continue its slow descent into chaos. Commander Drake gave them 24 hours to produce results. Every department scrambled to help, from the greenhouse managers seeking stable temperatures for the newly scorched plants, to the engineering crews working double shifts to mend essential hull plating. Medical personnel tended the injured, distributing oxygen masks and anti-burn salves. Like the many rivets binding Crosspeak's structure together, the station's inhabitants rallied to keep their home in one piece, forging solidarity out of shared adversity. While Lyra and Mia pored over reams of data, Raynor took a more direct path. He led a small team into the station's restricted sublevels, where the mainframe cores were stored. Rumors abounded of sabotage devices lurking in the darkness there, placed by unseen saboteurs. The corridors in these depths were cramped, illuminated by a sickly glow of emergency lights. The hiss of steam and the clang of shifting metal filled the stale air. Some claimed these underdecks were haunted by the ghosts of those lost to earlier accidents. But Raynor knew better. The only specters here were the cunning bits of code that hijacked the station's functions. Raynor's steps were cautious as he approached the mainframe chamber. Thick doors sealed by heavy locks. His companion, a technician named Lyra, keyed in an override code. But the door remained stubbornly shut. Undeterred, Raynor moved to a manual release valve and applied steady force. Memories of his earlier success with Lyra flitted through his mind. He braced himself, ignoring the pull of old scars, and felt the door groan as mechanisms gave way. They slipped inside to find the mainframe in disarray. Console screens flickered with static dot cables dangled from open panels, and the faint stench of smoke lingered. A series of small devices, spider-like in design, clung to the mainframe's data ports. Each had a blinking red light, pulses in time with the station's alarms. Raynor and Lyra approached with caution. Somebody planted these, Raynor muttered. Might be boosting the alien signal, or it could be direct sabotage. Lyra produced a specialized scanner, waving it over one of the devices. Her face paled at the reading. It's definitely receiving an external feed. If we remove them incorrectly, we risk permanent damage to the mainframe. Raynor bit his lip, thinking of the station's battered inhabitants, the charred corridors, and the unceasing sabotage. He knelt, examining the metal spider-like device closely. He recalled a technique from his old days, a way to isolate suspicious modules by first severing their link to main power, then submerging them in a protective field. Carefully, he applied a specialized clamp to the device's power conduit. A faint hiss told him the clamp had sealed the connection. The blinking light faltered, then went dark. Lyra let out a breath of relief. One by one, they repeated the process, removing the parasites from the mainframe ports. With each severed link, the station's system stabilized marginally. Yet Raynor sensed that this victory was small and incomplete. The real puppet master still loomed outside, waiting to resume control at any sign of weakness. Lyra's breakthrough came 14 hours into the crisis. Hunched over a battered terminal, she discovered that the alien signal exhibited cyclical patterns synchronized with Crosspeak's rotating position relative to Nightshade's central star. By analyzing these patterns, she believed they might pinpoint the angle from which the signal originated. Then, using the station's sensor array, they could unleash a targeted electromagnetic pulse to disrupt it. But to achieve this, she needed more power, far more than the battered systems could safely handle. She raced to the engineering deck, searching for Raynor amidst the bustling teams. When she found him prying open a jammed elevator door, she rushed over, breathless. We can trace the signal, maybe block it, but we need the station's backup fusion core. Raynor shook his head. That core is in partial lockdown from the fires. We've rerouted power for life support. If we divert too much, we might lose oxygen in some compartments, or risk another meltdown. Then we must isolate certain parts of the station, Lyra insisted, her eyes lit with the fervor of a discovery. Evacuate non-essential areas, draw from their power lines, and funnel it to the sensor array. We have one shot to disrupt this alien code before it reactivates those sabotage devices. He took a long, measured breath, recalling Commander Drake's earlier pleas. All right, Raynor agreed, nodding firmly. I'll work on coordinating the power flow. You handle the array alignment. But we need Commander Drake's clearance. Together, they rushed to the command center, presenting their plan. Initially, Commander Drake hesitated. Cutting power to entire decks was a grave decision. But the station's odds looked grim, and time ran short. Do it, Drake finally said, steeling himself. But be prepared for complications. And if this fails, I want fallback measures in place. Raynor and Lyra assembled teams across the station, guiding them to shut down non-critical sections, shifting precious power to the main sensor dish. Step by step, lights flickered off in less essential hallways. Some areas plunged into darkness. Vapor hissed from sealed conduits, the station groaning under radical power shifts. Tension soared. People huddled in designated safety zones, uncertain if they would have light or breathable air in the next moment. At last, the sensor array hummed to life. Spires unfolding on the exterior hull, battered by cosmic winds. Lyra adjusted the frequency, hands trembling with urgency. Meanwhile, Raynor stood by the main engineering console, monitoring power surges, prepared to shut everything down if the meltdown alarms blared. Mia coordinated final communications with potential allies, broadcasting a warning that the station would soon go dark, urging them to do the same. With a deep breath, Lyra initiated the pulse. An electric hum reverberated throughout Crosspeak, shaking the station's core as a colossal wave of electromagnetic force radiated outward. For a moment, the lights stuttered, screens went dark, and silence fell, broken only by the rasp of fearful breathing. Then, slowly, the systems rebooted in safe mode. Emergency lights flickered on. The station's chronometers resumed their ticking. In the hush that followed, the sabotage quieted, the code fragments abruptly lifeless. A sigh of relief echoed across the command center. Yet victory was incomplete. As soon as the station's main systems stabilized, the external sensors registered a presence on the station's perimeter. A small object, possibly a probe, hovered just outside the electromagnetic boundary. Fearing it might represent a new threat, Commander Drake dispatched a security team in an EVA shuttle to investigate. Through porthole windows, Crosspeak's inhabitants watched the shuttle drift through the star-flecked void, its lights sweeping the darkness like the lanterns of an ancient sea vessel. On the station monitors, the security team's feed revealed a menacing shape, a sleek, obsidian craft, no larger than a fighter, but brimming with advanced technology. The craft appeared unoccupied and unresponsive. Its surface shimmered with shifting glyphs that defied translation. With no visible windows or thrusters, it looked more organic than manufactured. The security team's attempt to dock was met with a faint repulsive field, like a bubble of electromagnetic force. Back in the command center, tension escalated. Lyra studied the craft's readings with fascination and dread. Raynor, stationed at her side, recognized the potential danger. If this vehicle was behind the sabotage, its pilot or masters might still be out there, prepared to launch another wave of assaults. Only Commander Drake's calm voice kept the staff steady, instructing them not to fire unless provoked. Meanwhile, Mia confirmed that the alien signal had vanished from Crosspeak's mainframe. The station's systems, though battered, now reported no new sabotage attempts. Repairs, however, would take days, if not weeks, and many sections of the station remained damaged or under lockdown. Morale hung in the balance, and the presence of the mysterious craft felt like a harbinger of fresh dangers. During this uneasy respite, Lyra and Raynor found themselves once more in the battered corridors, helping to transfer supplies and check for lingering fire hazards. A silence stretched between them, heavy with words unspoken. At last, Lyra swallowed her pride. "I was wrong about you," she said, halting her steps to face him. "I assumed your injuries made you weak, but you've proven otherwise. You've shown more bravery today than I ever credited you for." Raynor looked down at the charred floor, a flicker of humility in his eyes. "You've done more than your share, too. Your mind. It saved us. That pulse was your idea." She bowed her head slightly in acknowledgement, then offered a tentative smile. It was the first genuine warmth she had shown him since their earliest acquaintance. In that quiet moment, amid the half-ruined station, some of the barriers between them began to crumble. Though far from trusting each other entirely, they recognized in themselves a shared devotion to the station's survival, a devotion that outshone past resentments. As the days passed, the inferno that had once threatened to swallow Crosspeak Station receded into memory, leaving behind blackened corridors and half-flooded compartments. Engineers hammered metal plating over burnt-out hull sections, while medics oversaw the slow recovery of the injured. Exhausted but unbroken, the denizens of Crosspeak clung to hope, grateful that the crisis had not claimed them all. Lyra spent her hours studying the data gleaned from the mysterious craft floating near the station's perimeter. Its presence remained constant, an unmoving sentinel in the starlit void, neither retreating nor approaching. The station's external cameras occasionally picked up flickers of energy around the craft's hull, shimmering waves that suggested it was repairing itself or gathering data. But no sign indicated an immediate threat. Commander Drake considered sending another mission to board it. Yet each time, the craft's electromagnetic defenses warned them away. In the hush of her lab, Lyra examined every electromagnetic nuance. What she discovered was startling. The craft resonated at frequencies eerily akin to those found in the sabotage code. She theorized that the signals they had jammed were part of a living network, a link to something bigger, a mothership or an alien hive. Though she told none but Raynor of her suspicions, her mind whirled with possibilities, some too dark to contemplate. Raynor, in the meantime, coordinated with station personnel to rebuild structural integrity. He climbed ladders to access compromised vents, spent long hours welding broken beams, and reprogrammed drones to restore essential services. Whenever a minor fire flared up from leftover fuel or a shorted circuit, he personally led the response. His unwavering dedication earned him grateful nods even from those who once mocked his injuries. One evening, as the station's artificial twilight dimmed the corridors, Raynor made his way to the habitat ring, pausing to gaze out at the stars through a panoramic window. Nightshade's cosmic swirl glowed faintly, a tapestry of bright nebulas. With the station's crisis settling, he had time at last to reflect. He recalled Lyra's softened tone and her words of apology, the gentle shift in her once harsh demeanor. Something in him stirred a sense that perhaps, after all the storms they had weathered, a new dawn might be possible. He was not alone in his reverie. Lyra approached quietly, her boots echoing in the vacant corridor. She joined him at the window, arms folded across her chest. For a time, they said nothing. Then, almost in unison, they spoke. "We were lucky." "You know," Lyra murmured, a faint tremor in her voice. Raynor nodded. "Luck, yes, and a lot of stubbornness. You gave us the best shot by cutting that signal." A thin smile curved her lips. "And you gave us the time to act, holding the line against the flames." Their eyes met, and in that silent exchange, they found understanding. The station might still be scarred, but it was alive, and so were they. As Crosspeak Station embarked on the long road to recovery, a second wave of cunning sabotage struck. Though in a far subtler manner, it began with mild power fluctuations, easily dismissed as side effects of the meltdown crisis. But soon, entire subsystems began behaving erratically. Lab equipment refused certain commands, while petty devices sparked and crackled. The sabotage lacked the brute force of raging flames, but it threatened to undermine the station's delicate equilibrium. With alertness heightened, the station's security force scoured every dark nook, searching for new sabotage devices. The spider-like modules Raynor had removed earlier were absent this time. Instead, the infiltration seemed purely digital, weaving itself into the software like a virus. Mia and Lyra collaborated in a desperate effort, employing layered firewalls and labyrinthine encryption to keep the alien presence at bay. Hours stretched into nights. Steam hissed from overheated consoles, tension mounted, more suffocating than the smoke from the earlier fires. Then, abruptly, the sabotage ceased. Monitors resumed normal function. Lab equipment obediently returned to standard operational parameters. A message appeared on Lyra's terminal, scrolling across the screen in cryptic letters that seemed half machine, half language. "We have tested you. You resist and adapt. We shall consider other methods." The words vanished in a blink. Lyra's chest tightened, her pulse hammering. She alerted the command center immediately, but no trace of the message remained. The presence controlling that strange craft had spoken, or so it seemed. With no time to decode the alien's meaning, they could only prepare for the unknown. Anxiety rippled through the station. Commander Drake held an emergency meeting, urging vigilance and calm. In that gathering, Raynor stood beside Lyra, both of them stiff with tension. "If they plan to strike again," Drake intoned, "we need every department on high alert. We'll run daily checks on critical systems. Coordinate with any allied stations in range. This is no ordinary foe." Raynor met Lyra's gaze briefly, seeing the concern mirrored in her eyes. For all their progress, they now faced a new puzzle, the chilling possibility that these invisible antagonists might one day return with greater force. The station's newfound unity would be tested again, perhaps more severely than before. Yet, in that moment of collective unease, Lyra and Raynor discovered another bond hope. Hope that if they stood together, combining intellect and resolve, they might defend their fragile outpost. A faint courage sparked in their hearts. For no matter how advanced or cunning the adversary, they refused to yield. To yield was to perish, and they had already come too far, sacrificed too much, to let Crosspeak fall into the endless silence of nightshade space. Days slipped by, and though the direct threat receded, the station remained on edge. Patrols circled the hull, scouring the void for hidden aggressors. The obsidian craft still hovered, shining with ethereal glimmers, occasionally shifting its orientation as though taking aim. It never fired, it never withdrew. It simply existed, a silent testament to an alien intellect studying them from afar. During this uneasy calm, life at Crosspeak found a tentative rhythm. Workers repaired damaged systems, replaced scorched circuit boards, and reopened the sealed corridors after verifying safety. The agricultural dome, once threatened by the malfunctioning drone, regained its vibrancy under Lyra's careful adjustments to the climate controls. New seedlings sprouted in neat rows, the promise of continued sustenance for the station's populace. In her lab, Lyra continued analyzing the code remnants. Determined to unravel the enigma, she uncovered fleeting references to a cosmic relay, something akin to a distant broadcasting station, from which the alien presence might be orchestrating its attacks. Each clue hinted at a grand design, a labyrinth of signals reaching across light years, though no one knew for certain the ultimate motive behind this scheme. Its complexities dazzled Lyra's intellect while igniting a deep-rooted dread. Raynor, ever watchful, ensured that every corridor and junction was free of hidden sabotage devices. He took personal responsibility for the station's physical integrity, harnessing crew members for patchwork repairs. Lately, he and Lyra found themselves in each other's company more often, sharing quick updates or brainstorming new strategies. Despite the tension of looming threat, they discovered a growing harmony in their collaboration. Their differences persisted. Lyra's impatience contrasted with Raynor's measured calm, but each recognized the other's worth. forging a mutual respect that bordered on friendship. At times, they discussed personal histories in hushed tones, their revelations punctuated by the hum of overhead lights. Lyra revealed she had grown up on an overpopulated colony, her brilliant mind earning her a scholarship to Crosspeak, where she sought scientific freedom. Raynor confided that he once belonged to a frontier militia, from which he had resigned after a harrowing mission left him scarred, both physically and emotionally. Each story carried an undercurrent of loneliness, a sense of being misunderstood or undervalued. In those confessions, they found resonance. Commander Drake, observing their rapport, quietly smiled. His strategy of pairing them earlier, though met with friction, had proven wise. He sensed an emerging camaraderie, perhaps even a deeper bond, that might fortify the station's defenses in the uncertain days ahead. Late one cycle, as Crosspeak's artificial night cloaked the corridors in gentle dimness, Mia summoned Lyra, Raynor, and Commander Drake to the communications deck. She had made a breakthrough. After weeks of painstaking analysis, Mia had uncovered an alternate channel hidden in the cosmic static. Initially dismissed as background radiation, it now revealed itself as a faint but continuous stream of coded pulses. Using advanced filters, Mia deciphered partial messages. They referred to an exarch nexus, some central intelligence orchestrating the sabotage across multiple stations. References to biome assimilation surfaced, suggesting an ominous interest in human habitats. No direct mention revealed the craft outside Crosspeak, but the parallels were too compelling to ignore. Had that sleek obsidian vessel journeyed from this so-called exarch nexus? Was it the vanguard of a larger invasion? Commander Drake set his jaw. We must broadcast a warning to any outposts within range. Let them know what we've discovered. Agreed, Lyra said, leaning over Mia's console. But we should also prepare for retaliation. If this exarch nexus discovers we've identified it, the next attack might be more severe. Raynor quietly added, the station can't sustain another catastrophic fire. We're still recovering. We need stronger defenses, or a contingency plan in case we must evacuate. That final word tasted bitter to them all, for Crosspeak was more than a mere structure of metal and circuits. It was home. Yet Raynor had said aloud what others merely feared: no fortress is unassailable. And if the foe was truly vast, retreat might be the only way to preserve lives. Commander Drake nodded heavily. We'll bolster defenses, Lyra, Raynor. If there's a way to shield ourselves from infiltration, find it. Mia, get that warning out on every frequency we have. Let's see if we can glean any outside help. So commenced a frenzied period of planning. Weapons arrays were tested and recalibrated. Barrier fields reinforced. The station's starship dock prepared emergency transports, while families debated what few belongings they could gather if forced to flee. In the midst of that gloom, a single bright note sounded. A distant outpost responded to Mia's broadcasts, offering both sympathy and whatever meager resources they could spare. Perhaps Crosspeak was not alone after all. Tensions reached a breaking point when the obsidian craft stirred from its silent vigil. With an unsettling grace, it drifted closer, crossing the station's hull perimeter. Alarms blared as Crosspeak's gun batteries locked on target, but no shot was fired. Commander Drake ordered a measured response, not wanting to provoke a more dangerous escalation. Through the panoramic windows, the station's occupants watched as the craft glided along the hull, scanning each subsystem with a ghostly beam of teal light. In the command center, a hush blanketed the staff. Lyra and Raynor observed the readouts, hearts pounding. The craft's energies spiked, its glyphs shimmering in frantic patterns. Mia gasped. A new surge of alien code hammered at the station's firewalls. System after system lit up with urgent warnings. Lyra frantically typed override commands, while Raynor reconnected manual failsafes. For several tense minutes, it seemed Crosspeak might again fall to sabotage. But this time, they were prepared. The station's newly fortified defenses held, repelling the hostile infiltration. Frustrated, The craft unleashed a brief surge of luminous energy, scorching a shallow line along the station's exterior plating. Sparks flew from the impact, but no lethal damage was done. Commander Drake clenched his fists, about to order a counterattack, when the craft suddenly veered away, its thrusters blazing. It accelerated beyond the hull's perimeter, leaving the station to tremble in its wake. The monitors showed it disappearing into the cosmic gloom, as though recalled by an invisible command. For a moment, relief replaced fear, yet the underlying tension remained. Where had the craft gone? Would it return with reinforcements from the X-Arch Nexus? A hush settled over Crosspeak. Repair crews flocked to the scorched hull plating, verifying that no deeper damage compromised the pressurized sections. Drake allowed a small sigh. They had withstood this intrusion, but the future remained a question mark. That same evening, an impromptu gathering took place in the station's central promenade, where the taverns once bustled. In an effort to raise morale, the local innkeeper set out warm meals for all. Crew members mingled, swapping stories of near escapes from the fires, the saboteur devices, and the craft's menacing past. Timid laughter mingled with anxious glances. Even small joys carried undertones of fear. Yet the station endured. Lyra and Raynor found a quiet corner table. Though neither was inclined to revelry, they shared a meal, the weight of recent events fueling their conversation. Lyra peered at Raynor, voice subdued. "We've come so close to losing everything, more than once now. I can't help but wonder if we're just delaying the inevitable." He traced a finger around the rim of his mug, eyes focused on the swirling surface. The universe is vast, full of threats we can't imagine. But in that same universe, there's resilience, people coming together. "Look at us." She nodded. The memory of her initial scorn flashed through her mind. So much had changed since then, her perception of him, her understanding of true strength. She felt a quiet gratitude that he had been at her side, both in the blaze and in the face of an alien menace. Outside, the stars glimmered through the observation dome, whispering cosmic secrets. And for the first time in weeks, Lyra found a moment's peace in the midst of the unknown. In the days that followed, the battered station rallied once more. Commander Drake ordered a thorough inspection of the station's external defenses, retrofitting them with advanced detection modules gleaned from the partial data Mia uncovered. The crew hastened to restore function to all essential systems, bracing for another hostile visit from the unknown craft. A sense of grim determination wove through Crosspeak's corridors. If the station was to stand, every occupant needed to remain vigilant. Meanwhile, Lyra made an astounding discovery. By cross-referencing the encrypted code from the sabotage events with the faint signals that still drifted across Nightshade's star-laden expanse, she located a pattern that pointed to a hidden base in a remote sector. Though the coordinates were incomplete, they suggested the presence of an artificial outpost perched on the fringe of a swirling nebula, far beyond typical shipping lanes. She presented her findings to Commander Drake and Raynor in a small briefing chamber. The aging commander studied the projected star map, lines of data whirling in holographic arcs. "If that base is real," Drake mused, "it could be the forward operating station for these invaders. We have no guarantee of their strength, though. A direct strike could be suicide." Raynor folded his arms, glancing at Lyra. "But if they're the ones controlling the sabotage, shutting that base down might ensure Crosspeak's safety, maybe even help other outposts, too." Lyra tucked her hair behind her ear, eyes alight with fervor. "We'd need a small strike team, maybe a stealth approach. Our station can't survive a prolonged battle. If we do this, we have to do it right, and fast." The discussion that followed was intense. The station's resources were limited, and they could ill afford to send away valuable personnel. Yet the longer they waited, the likelier the enemy would launch a renewed assault. In the end, Commander Drake agreed, albeit reluctantly. They would form a specialized group led by Lyra and Raynor, armed with the station's only stealth-capable craft, the Starflare. Their mission: infiltrate the coordinates, gather intel, disrupt any transmissions guiding sabotage across the sector, and, if feasible, disable the threat permanently. Preparations commenced at once. Raynor supervised the outfitting of the Starflare, ensuring it carried extra shield modules and powerful cutting tools. Lyra oversaw the data libraries they would bring for infiltration. Mia scrambled to code a sophisticated virus that could neutralize the alien system. The crew worked through sleepless nights, hearts pounded by the knowledge that the fate of Crosspeak and perhaps countless other stations hung in the balance. Departure day dawned, signaled by the station's artificial chronometers. In the dock, the Starflare rested like a sleek dagger, its surface shimmering with advanced cloaking. A small crowd gathered to bid farewell, their expressions a mix of hope and trepidation. Commander Drake clasped Lyra's hand, then Raynor's, his gaze earnest. "We'll monitor your progress. Return to us, no matter the outcome." Lyra nodded. She felt the weight of the entire station's trust upon her shoulders. She noticed Raynor's steady, comforting presence as he boarded the craft. They took their seats in the cockpit, joined by 2 additional operatives skilled in piloting and navigation. With a reverberating hum, the Starflare lifted from the dock, gliding through the pressurized airlock into the star-dappled vacuum. Nightshade's swirling constellations enveloped them, vast and silent. The craft's cloaking shimmered to life, bending light around them until they virtually disappeared. Mia's voice crackled over the comm, offering final words of encouragement. Then, the Starflare fired its engines, leaving Crosspeak Station behind like a glimmering jewel set against endless black. In the cockpit, Lyra calibrated the jump coordinates gleaned from her painstaking research. "If the data's correct," she murmured, "we'll emerge near a dense nebula cluster. The base might be hidden deep inside, shielded from prying eyes." Raynor nodded from the co-pilot seat, guiding the craft through smooth acceleration. "Then let's hope our cloak holds. We'll slip in quietly and see what we find." The first jump catapulted them light years away, stars blurring into luminous streaks. Emerging in an unfamiliar region, they scanned the space. The star map displayed only faint outlines of swirling cosmic dust. Another jump followed, deeper into uncharted territory. Tension coiled in the cabin. Each leap drew them closer to the unknown, a realm that might harbor unimaginable threats. Upon the final jump, the Starflare emerged in a thick veil of purple-blue nebula gases, swirling tendrils illuminated by distant starlight. The sensors struggled to pierce the gaseous soup. Lyra, eyes narrowed, refined the scans. Then, faint as a distant heartbeat, she detected an artificial structure nestled amid the swirling debris. A hush fell over the craft. They had found something. Raynor turned toward her, voice hushed. "This is it. If we can shut down whatever's here, maybe we free Crosspeak and every other station from these alien manipulations." Lyra swallowed hard, summoning her courage. "Let's finish this," she said, and guided the Starflare toward the hidden base. Uncertain whether they would survive to see Crosspeak Station's lights again, they pressed on through the swirling fog of cosmic dust and peril, hearts bound by newfound unity, determined that the darkness would not consume them. While Crosspeak's inhabitants waited with bated breath, 2 souls, once divided by scorn and misunderstanding, led the charge, proving that in unity lay the spark of hope, and in the vast theater of Nightshade space, their bravery would shine like a beam of starlight cutting through the thickest nebula, reminding all that true strength is found not in physical perfection alone, but in the unyielding courage of the human spirit. Happy ending. In the weeks that followed, Lyra and Raynor succeeded beyond all expectations. Using Mia's virus and their combined ingenuity, they disabled the hidden relay, cutting off the alien signal at its source. Though they encountered automated defenses and a labyrinth of advanced technology, their unity, perseverance, and resourcefulness saw them through. The obsidian craft vanished shortly after the relay was destroyed, leaving Crosspeak and its neighboring outposts in long-sought peace. In recognition of their bravery, Commander Drake commended them both, Their once fractious partnership now a shining example of what could be accomplished when mind and might, heart and will, work together. Upon returning to Crosspeak Station, the entire population turned out to greet the star flare. The damage from the blaze and sabotage was gradually being repaired, new corridors built stronger than before. In a ceremony beneath the dome of starlight, Lyra and Raynor stood before their fellow survivors, scars and differences replaced by mutual respect, their bond a testament to resilience. Lyra, who once scorned his supposed frailty, now reached for Raynor's hand as Commander Drake recounted the story of their mission. Applause thundered in the halls, echoing through the station's metallic bones. A resounding cheer that carried hope across every battered deck. And so, under the vast and glittering skies of Nightshade, Crosspeak Station emerged from the fires and conspiracies reborn. Its people, now bound by shared triumph, faced the future with renewed courage. Lyra and Raynor, at last free from the shackles of mistrust, quietly walked side by side through corridors that no longer smelled of smoke, heads held high. For in darkness they had found each other's true strength, and in unity they had forged a flame brighter than any star, a flame that no alien signal, no shadowy power could extinguish.